Part of the beauty of Oda's storytelling is his way of characterizing the Grand Line, a world consumed by confusion, in which the laws of nature break down, conventional ethics are obsolete, and all preconceived notions of right and wrong prove themselves to be unreliable. Yet, in this absurd place hides everything the world has to offer. Regardless of where a person comes from, everyone is a child of the sea, and those children whose ambition is true gravitate towards the Grand Line. Knowing what to expect is a luxury that must be discarded in order to answer the call of freedom. Shortly after the defeat of Arlong, Luffy and his Straw Hat crew were declared enemies of the world. The bounty on Luffy's head indicated how much of a danger he was in the eyes of the government. He had upset the status quo enough to earn him 10 times the reputation of an average pirate in the East Blue. On his way to Lowtown, the place which bookended the life of Goldie Roger, Luffy's future was being attended to by many forces beyond his awareness. An audience of friends and foes stalked his entrance to the Grand Line, including his very own father, who kept his identity secret, and whose cryptic designs have remained a mystery ever since. From the opposite point of view, the voices of justice and authority decried Luffy's privilege to live. Marines watched his voyage unfold, silently awaiting the moment to strike. In the eyes of Captain Smoker, the man in the straw hat proved himself exceptional both in character and fortune. If Dragon had not intervened, Smoker's nest would have defeated him. Much later on, Aokiji chose to let the Straw Hats go, entrusting the will of Ohara into their capable hands. A third bastion of justice, Admiral Fujitora, made a similar decision, in gambling on Luffy to bring about Dressrosa's liberation. All the while, others, under the leadership of the world government, conspired to annihilate the bloodline of the previous pirate king, to keep the gears of subjugation turning. Their paradigm was quite clear. They wished to keep the world the same forever, so that they could always know what to expect. Their quest for dominion over knowledge demanded scrutiny into the secret mysteries of the world, including the nature of the ancient weapons. Crusaders set sail under the banner of Cipher Pull Aegis to hunt down and claim these secrets. Among the agents of this crusade, the most infamous was Rob Lucci, who had auditioned for his role by massacring an entire pirate crew, as well as 500 of their hostages. His violent and sadistic whims were rationalized as a necessary evil. Those dead hostages were collateral damage left in the wake of Justice's execution. In fact, they deserved to die. They were guilty of the ultimate crime, victimhood. Just as the villainous pirates were sentenced to death for their rebellion against sovereign money, the victims of these pirates were executed for being weaklings. The moniker of Dark Justice was established in order to license the egregious behavior of Cipher Pull. If the world government needed someone dead, but wanted to keep their hands clean, then Cipher Pull would act under the cover of darkness, and take the blame if the murder came to light. Should the public be outraged, then it was a fluke assassination by some mad killer. In Greek mythology, the Aegis of Zeus represented the unmatched power of Olympus, and the one who wore it was destined by the heavenly mandate to live in the face of death. Similarly, the Aegis of the celestial Holy Land Marijois protected Lucci and his comrades from punishment. Justice in One Piece is a complicated matter because of the aforementioned indecipherable nature of the Grand Line. One clear aspect of justice, however, is the fact that it is the foil to freedom. Joy Boy's wide-eyed lust for adventure is foiled by the world government's blind adherence to morality. Questions of right and wrong, and of who deserves what, weigh down the minds of the authorities, and their legal bureaucracy untangles the confusion by branding the haves and the have-nots. But behind this optical illusion is the shadowy presence of dark justice. All melodrama aside, the systemic issues of the Grand Line can seemingly be blamed on a sinister ruling class. Dark justice is nothing more than their excuse to commit atrocities. Even if people choose to believe in the existence of a necessary evil, they will find themselves fooled into a complicit alliance with evil itself. To fight a war, after all, is to embrace the devil. Lucci is not the devil. He's just the devil's goon. Dark justice is his aegis for freelance murder, his permission to delight in the death of others, as he was groomed from childhood to do. His predatory nature was engineered by the government, and his bloodlust was fashioned into a commodity. Rob Lucci was what the criminal underbelly of the New World tried so hard to produce. Treble attempted it with Doflamingo, and Doflamingo attempted it with Law. Each saw the potential for insurmountable evil in their pupil, a vulnerable youth tempted towards darkness by their trauma, a vessel of inherited will that might advance towards even darker thresholds. To put it concisely, they saw people who would do their dirty work. Lucci is no different. Strong though he may be, he is only a pawn of the war machine. The world government decides where his agency begins and ends. Every servant of theirs lives in subjugation, unaware that law and order are yet another yarn spun by the victors who define justice. The world government has conquered the minds of their people, if not directly, then indirectly. While Rob Lucci may not have the paw print of the celestial dragons branded on his back, he does sport the scars of a war waged on the weak. Scars which are shaped exactly like the symbol of the world government. The world government quite literally owns him. What leash would be strong enough to make the likes of Rob Lucci into a lapdog of the celestial dragons? What formulation of dark justice could subdue an untamable killer?
昔教えたよな、ロー。弱えやつは死に方も選べねえ。
Precious life can be robbed by the world without a second thought, and those caught harboring frailty must bow down and beg forgiveness, or else perish. Such ultimate atonement awaits all who are guilty of benefiting from the common peace. The crown of judgment can be claimed by one power alone. Every inferior to that power buys their life with tribute. On the sacrificial altar of the gods lies the innocent young lamb of freedom. The splendid survivors who outlast their fallen compatriots are then themselves taken hostage and forced to live under a singular conception of utopia. This is the way that tyrants rule, with a hierarchy of the oppressed punishing the oppressed. Admiral Kizaru correctly refers to himself as just another cog in the machine because, truthfully, that's the limit of his power. The same is true of every other harbinger of the world government's absolute justice. The law itself enslaves its own benefactors. Rob Lucci's dark justice delves even deeper into the moral void. Intrinsic oppression is not enough to justify the fervor with which he carries out the law. For a man like him, who is never authorized to experience childhood, there exists something worse than meaningless punishment. Knowledge that someone is allowed to live freely and peacefully without being a slave to the gods, especially if that someone is weaker than he is. Think of the injustice. Perhaps Lucci was born black-hearted, but there is an undeniable fixation in his mentality towards punishing the weak. Unlike Law, he was traumatized not by his own curse, but by the blessings of others. Rob Lucci's burning hunger to punish those who are redeemed may have been the reason why he fought so hard at Enya's lobby. Losing in physical combat was punishment enough, but letting Nico Robin go? Letting a devil child escape from an enslavement that he continued to volunteer himself for, that would be the ultimate shame. Something brilliantly human emerges from Lucci's character, tragic though it is. Throughout history, there have been people who have committed atrocities. Some would argue that human existence is inherently an atrocity. Others would go further and theorize that the human experiment has been such an atrocity that it dictates retribution. Many of the infamous mass murderers produced by our species have justified their actions as some kind of kamikaze against the oppressive nature of humanity itself, thinking that in a world so meaningless, the only justice comes from punishing the innocent. Such a painful point of view might sound more like Don Quixote do Flamingo, who is a better example of the phenomenon of blind hatred. Lucci's dark justice, however, is the reciprocal ideology, hateful darkness. Both of these fictional monsters do justice to the unjust reality of hatred, but Lucci's is the more rational and detached version. There is no passion in Lucci's efforts to muffle the cries of the oppressed, only brutish logic and the shameful feeling that he deserves more than what he has. Of course, unlike Kizaru, Rob Lucci fails to notice that the clockwork of justice is breaking down. He is friendless and alone, very much so by choice. Kaku at least smiled at defeat like a good sport, and he acknowledged Pauli and the others with warmth, in spite of having betrayed them. For him, there may yet be a foothold out of the abyss, but even if compassion is offered to Lucci, he will bite the generous hand that reaches out to touch him. The irony of Lucci's dark justice is that in the end, he is its biggest victim. He would rather die with pride, embracing the devil, than live with the shame of being grateful to someone else. A perpetual cycle of remorseless vengeance characterizes Lucci's existence, and in the end, he is the only one who will be forever defeated by it. The Grand Line is no place for rigid codes of honor, for unyielding grudges, or implacable self-loathing. These dead weights must be thrown overboard if one hopes to weather the storm. Indeed, if Oda's characterization of the Grand Line has made anything clear, it's that surviving it purges the darkness from people's hearts.